Okay, welcome everybody. If you are part of our Facebook group, you know we've got these really cool weekly challenges going on where we pick a new topic and we have all of our group members go out that week and capture that weekly topic in such a way where they interpret our topic in any way that they can in a creative fashion. So we always pick three winners, first, second, and third. But I thought we'd do something a little bit different this week because what I think a lot of people want to see is how we go about judging these photographs. As you see here, hopefully, I'm pretty sure everybody's images are here. That's one thing I want to make clear is when you do make a submission to our weekly photo challenges, you are going to want to go up to the top right where there's the three little dots and try to tag it with the post topic of weekly photo challenge. So if you don't do that, it's okay. I mean, I still go heavily on the lookout for anything that people are posting if they maybe missed it. Sometimes mobile devices don't allow you to tag a topic. So if you don't see your photograph here, I'm sorry, but I dug really deep looking for everybody's stuff. With that said, here's our submissions for the week. Let's go over them. Let's take a look at them. Now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going through each and every one of them. I don't know quite whose is which and whose is which is part of the fun, is because I don't really want to know whose photographs are whose photographs. I want to look at how well they executed their camera skills, their imagination, and the idea and interpretation of the weekly photo challenge topic. So let's take a look at these. First things first, let's just start at the top left. Let's pick up this image here. Oh, this is a great image. Okay. Excuse me. So, when I'm looking at stuff, when I'm looking at photographs, first thing I look for is obviously if we're doing a weekly photo challenge, and this weekly photo challenge was I Spy with my little eye, wheels. So, any interpretation of wheels, what a great interpretation here. This is a fantastic image. You guys hear me talking about storytelling all the time? This image has it right there. So, what's so great about this image? The photographer here got tack sharp focus on that moving RC car. That's not an easy task, okay? That's what makes this photograph stand out immediately. So when you look at a photograph, you want the viewer's attention to go directly to where your intended focal point is. So here you'll see that this little girl is driving this RC car on the rule of thirds. She's on the rule of thirds. The car's on the rule of thirds. One little nitpick here is I'm noticing that this horizontal line is not straight, so maybe this image could have been tilted a little bit, would be clockwise, just a tick, just a little bit, just to make sure that this line is straight with the edges of the frame. Other than that, exposure, focal point, and this is perfection. What a fantastic image. So let's take a look. Okay, it's going to rearrange them that way. I'm going to go ahead, as I go through, I'm going to actually minimize them so we don't go over too. All right, let's check this one out. All right, a good play on wheels again. Again, everybody, what I'm looking for is that focal point. I'm looking for that exposure. Focal point is nailed here. This image is sharp. I know it's pixelated a little bit from the Facebook translation. That makes no difference to me. I can see right through that. What I'm really looking for here is this focal plane, okay? So you notice that this little miniature car is completely in focus, and so is the area around it. And you'll notice that the blur starts just around the car. Do you know what that tells me? I don't have their settings up, but I know everybody's shooting with some pretty good settings. I'm seeing a lot of 100 ISOs out there, which makes me super proud, okay? It's great that everybody's starting to understand that the lower ISO that you have, the higher quality images and the sharper edges that you're going to get. So fantastic there. This image here, I'm going to guess. What I like to do is work out what aperture you're working with, and I do that with a focal length and a visual perception of where the blur is falling off, and then the bokeh of the depth of field itself. So what I'm guessing here, I'm going to say that this photographer was probably it seems pretty flat, so I'm going to say a longer focal length maybe, and probably like an f4, 5.6, something like that. Fantastic focus, fantastic exposure, great black and white, great contrast. What a great image. This is a great image. Let's see what else we got. All right, so let's move into here. I know who's photographed this. I got a couple of photographs doubled up there. All right. Here we are. We got this one here. Now, Whitney, she's been in my Frame Your Future class for some time now, and I've been working hard with her on her exposure, and both exposure and focal point, and she nailed it here. Completely nailed it. Not only that, but she's actually doing layer masking now. So remember, our photo challenge topic was wheels, but look at how many wheels. Look at how Whitney interpreted the wheel challenge here. She layer masked. That's what I really, really like about this image, is because, you know, you go down to storytelling and you want to put thoughts and emotions in people's heads. What I really like about this image is, yeah, I can notice that it's layer masked in here, and she could have worked on her layer masking a little bit here. I can see the edges is a little rough. That's fine, but the concept here is great, because you have to imagine that this tractor would be so heavy that it wouldn't be able to, that this truck wouldn't be able to carry that tractor. So that's fun. You know, that makes me laugh. That's hilarious. I love that. Not only that, you know, so she's shooting into something that has the shadow, and I know Whitney has a light meter, so what she would have done was go stand in the shadow area, grab her light meter and meter for the shadow area, because all of this is a highlight, okay? So all of this is highlight. If you were to meter, you know, get your exposure meter on your camera or your handheld meter and metered for this direct sunlight, instead of this shadow area that is actually the face of the truck itself, you'll notice that the face of the truck is in shadow. You can't adjust your camera for this amount of light, okay? Because what will happen there is it'll completely darken the shadow. So Whitney knows that you have to actually meter for the shadow area so that the shadow area is properly exposed. You add on the framing and composition of this image, fantastic image. Great job, Whitney. Loving to see you grow, okay? Moving on, let's check this guy out, okay? Look, as you can tell, guys, we got a lot of submissions. So, like I said, we're taking something new here, and I really want everybody to watch me go through these images so you can see what it is I'm looking for, maybe a little golden nugget or two on some insight. Let me pull this one up, because this one, my eye keeps going to this one. I really like this one here. So my brother's a BMX rider. I grew up with BMX bikes all the time, so this one naturally stands out to me. What else I really like about this image here is, you may not notice this right away, but here's what you want to do when you're doing photography, is you want to control the viewer's eye. And so you do that with your focal point to get their eye to go to an immediate area, but then you want your viewer's eye to kind of dance around the image a little bit, if you know what I mean. So when I look at this image, I see the red immediately, okay? So I see the red, that's the first thing I see. Then my eyes go to the wheel here and the bike, and realizing that it's a little mini bike, and then it comes over here to the spider web over here. So this image, fantastic image. What I am noticing, you know, it's hard sometimes to translate these from Facebook, you know, because Facebook compresses them. What I'm noticing here is the focus is a little soft, although the exposure is great. And by exposure, I mean like the brightness or darkness is equaled out and it looks great. So what I'm looking at here is, I'm going to assume this photographer was probably handheld and probably focused, and then maybe swayed either backwards or forward, maybe just a little bit. And what that would have done was, even though your camera was in focus when you focused on the bike, if you would have just moved even just a little bit, your camera will still say it's in focus, but you take your photo, but now you're not the same distance away from your focal point, so it'll come out soft. Not a big deal, not a big deal. It's not that soft, but it's not tack sharp. You could certainly sharpen this up with a sharpening adjustment in Photoshop. With that said, depth of field here is looking great. I'm looking at all this nice, beautiful bokeh here. Love this image. Love it. Love it. Minimize that one. Okay, let's see here. I'll pull up this guy here. This is a really great play on composition and rule of thirds and trying to tell a story here. I'm trying to not have that segue in. Clearly a lot of planning going on here, okay? just so everybody knows, when I look at these photographs and when I judge my competitions, I'm judging it on multiple things. One of them is obviously the play on the interpretation of the actual concept challenge that we place for the week. And obviously, this one is wheels. And then I look into photographic skill. And then I look into prep time and planning and things like that. So let's talk about this image for a while. Obviously, this image was heavily planned out. You got the fire going on, you've got the wheelbarrow on the rule of thirds. In fact, the wheel of the wheelbarrow is actually exactly on the rule of thirds. Let me see if I can do this without, oh, let's stop doing that. So you'll notice that the rule of thirds, so this is a great approach to storytelling, okay? The idea of storytelling is you do not want to waste space, okay? So if you're trying to tell a story, if there's a piece of information that doesn't need to be there, get rid of it. And it's better to get rid of it in camera by either changing your perspective, maybe zooming in a little bit more, adjusting your maybe height or lowering to the ground a little bit. So on that point, well, when we're talking about wasting space here, this image here has a little bit too much up space. The space on the top. I usually call it headroom when it comes to portraits, but here we're just going to call this like the top quarter margin here. This is a little bit too much extra space. I think this image could have more impact if we were zoomed in more on the fire and the wheelbarrow itself. And, you know, because here's what I mean by wasting space, guys. You'll notice here, so you've got this structure here, okay? So this is interesting, okay? And so is this area of the forest, okay? But this area of the forest is interesting, but it's just as interesting all the way up here. So if it's not going to add more to your image, there's no reason to include it. You don't need all this extra shrubbery if it's the same visual shrubbery as this. Now let's reverse that a little bit. Okay, so when you would want to leave extra space appears when you have something in the background that is significantly different than what the rest of the image is like. So for instance, let's say if the tree's cut off here and you had some beautiful cloud cover up here, then this composition would make a little bit more sense. Okay, with that said, fantastic image. Rule of thirds is great. Wheelbarrow playing on the wheel. Focus is tough to judge when you're coming off of Facebook. So focus is looking a little soft, maybe. Maybe you probably focus there right on the tire, which is what you probably should have been doing for this challenge anyway. But it's looking like the tire is the sharpest part of this image. I'm literally like right up on top of my screen right now, checking that out. And you guys, I don't miss much. So just so you know, I dig deep into these. So I'm wondering what shutter speed you were at. I know everybody has their settings posted, but I like to break it down and reverse work what the settings would be. All right, so here, regardless of wherever you were with your settings, you're a little bit overexposed. And when I mean overexposed is you're a little bright, okay? So what I really want to see is the richness of the color of this red. And when you overexpose something, when you put too much light into your camera, excuse me, when you put too much light into your camera, it gets too bright. And when you want to get that really rich, polished, deep, rich color that you see all the time, you see me shooting with, that really rich color, I mean, you have to hit your exposure completely accurate. And that's why I stress handheld meters so much, is because reflective meters, 1/3, 2/3, a full stop different, like missed exposure, will ruin your color depth. Sure, you can get some of it back in Lightroom on RAW, but it's not going to be the same if you hit your exposure completely accurate on your first try. And that's why reflective metering systems that you have inside of your camera can be frustrating. Because if you're pointing your camera at this scene here, your camera is reading all kinds of different highlights and shadows and highlights and mixes of colors and stuff like that. And that will throw your exposure meter off. Now, that is why this image is probably bright. I mean, I'm just taking a guess here. But anyway, you're going to want to watch that. What you'd probably want to do in this situation to get a more accurate exposure using the reflective metering system inside your camera would be to actually switch to your spot metering system and put your focusing dot like right here. right on this red area, not over here, because remember, we're being lit by the sun, and we want to really bring out this rich red color. So let's get into a light reading for how much light is reflecting off of this red wheelbarrow, okay? So then if you were to spot meter here or use a handheld meter, this would be like this deep, rich color, okay? So fantastic image, great composition, great framing, just a little bit extra top room, and focal points a little soft, but that could be because of Facebook. But yeah, love the fire, fantastic. I love the thinking, yeah. All right, let's check this guy out. Let's pan these out for a bit here. This image here, I have a clue of whose images this is here. All right, slow shutter speed. We're in the daylight here, so we're at a slow shutter. All right, so we're probably at 100 ISO. I'm going to say like, in order to get a slow enough shutter speed to get this amount of blur during the day, you would have had to have been at a higher aperture. So I'm going to say like 16 to 22, somewhere in there, maybe 20 or 18 or something like that. Somewhere at the high aperture that would darken your image so much that allows you to drag out your shutter speed duration time for a longer amount of time. And since there's a longer amount of time, that makes up for the loss of light with a higher aperture. When you have a higher aperture, you're not letting in a lot of light, so you have to compensate for that with shutter speed by letting your shutter speed be open for longer. Well, this photographer took advantage of that, knowing that they wanted to get a blur out of their image and set their shutter speed to something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds probably. I don't know. I can't judge that because I don't know how fast his wheel is turning, but I'm going to say it's probably a 2-second shutter. Focus looks great. Exposure value looks great. Composition looks great. I don't have anything to nitpick about this. Fantastic image. Great image. All right, let's see. Let's just pick a random one in next here. In fact, I know that this one is not Christina's entry. Let's go ahead and pull this one up. I love this, okay? Fantastic image, guys. So what I'm looking for, everybody, you're looking for focal point, okay? So you're looking for focal point first, and when you're doing anything that's alive, when you're photographing anything that's alive, you want to focus directly on their eyeball if you can. I don't care if it's a dog, a lizard, a kangaroo, a human, whatever. You want to focus directly on their eye because you have to imagine we're talking about a visual thing here. We're talking about photography that's visual, okay? Well, how do humans look at photography? They want to identify with whatever living organism that it is. That's why you want your viewer's attention to go directly to the eyeball, which this photographer did exceptionally well, okay? I know that because when I look here, it's tack sharp. And you know what else I noticed? Check out this catch light, okay? When you break images down, everybody, you can find out everything you need to know about that photographer's approach, okay? So what I know about looking at this image here, that there is some sort of studio light box, some sort of, let's see here. I don't think this is a strobe. I think this is an actual modeling light. And I'm judging that by the amount of blur that I see on the depth of field. So, fantastic. I mean, this image right here, wow. Amazing. Great play on the concept of the wheel. I mean, just a fantastic pose of the dog. Tack sharp focus of the eye. Exposure's looking good. Contrast is looking good. If I were to nitpick anything at all, it would be the tiniest of little bit, and it would be a polishing thing in Photoshop, which I would probably just go in and clean up, just little unsightly things, like this little white dot here, this little white dot here, maybe some of this fringing here. I'd clean that up with the clone stamp, and I would only take the time to do that little bit of nitpicks because this image is so amazing. I wouldn't do that on one of my deletable images. I would do that on an image that I was so proud of because I wanted to be that polished look, and I want someone to have it on their wall or on my own wall. Love this image. This is super well executed. Whoever did this, if you're watching this, great job. Okay, let's check it out. What else we got here? Let's bring this guy up here. Another fantastic execution of black and white right here. We're looking, again, looking for focal point, everybody. Looking for focal point. Obviously, I find my focal point in this image right about here. I'd say the focal point is here. And then you'll notice away from the focal point in a radial fashion, you start to get blur, okay? And that, guys, there's no good or bad in photography. Blur is a good thing and it can be a bad thing, but it's both. You see what I'm saying? Like, when you learn the rules of photography, you can do whatever you want, okay? But you've got to know that you have to find a focal point, and it has to be precise, okay? I mean, it doesn't have to, but if you want a great photograph, you have to have a precise focal point. So this is a very nice focal point here, and this is a great play on wheels, because when I make my challenges, when I say, you know, the weekly challenge is wheels, I don't want to see, you know, just basic wheels all the time. I love to see people's interpretation of it. You know, even a sign that says wheels on it would be a pass for this challenge, because we're talking about wheels, and I love to make people think outside the box, okay? All right. So, exposure's looking good, focal point's looking good, horizon is looking nice and straight as far as I can tell. This rope here maybe could have been included to help maybe tell a little bit of a story about what this is. Not a big deal. And then one little tinier nitpick. If you guys have noticed, I like to nitpick a lot, and that's what's brought me to where I am now. So if you find yourself on this video that you're watching now and you find me nitpicking your images, just know it's with love, okay? Other than that, I might have probably left just a tiny little bit of more space underneath this leg, just to kind of really round out the attention of the viewer to this mechanism here, this pulley system or winch, or maybe this is for boats. I'm not quite sure. If this is your photograph, let me know in the Facebook group what this is exact. I'm gonna guess this is a winch, like a winch for pulling in boats or something like that. Let me know. That looks, let's go on to this image here. Good, great image. Okay, direct sunlight, difficult time to shoot in, but it's a good time to shoot in for inanimate objects if you position yourself in a good way. You'll notice when you get direct sunlight shots like this, you get harsh shadows, so you're going to want to be, you have to constantly train your eye from highlight to shadow, okay? So you got to constantly train your eye, highlights, midtones, and shadows. Not only that, but you want to constantly train your eye on color. Of course, it's not easy because it takes some direction, some training, and just practice and experience. So what we're looking at here is I'm looking at a nice sharp focal point here. And what else I'm looking at here is this photograph. I'm trying to figure out how, where was the, I know the sun is up here because I know the shadow is falling over here. Maybe it's more over here. But what I'm seeing is a really bright background, which is fine, which is great because that means you exposed for your subject. But if you're, you got me on this one. This is really good. Maybe it was a directional light in such a way that it was reflecting towards here. Because if this was in shade, it would make sense that this was all blown out. So if this is your photograph, why don't you drop me a message and let me know what you did here? Because you kind of got me stumped here in a good way. And I don't know if this is JPEG distortion from Facebook compression or not. But no big deal. You know, I always take that into consideration, everybody. If you post an image, you know, to our group or anywhere on Facebook and you're unhappy with the way it came out because Facebook compresses it, do not worry that it has no bearing whatsoever on my judging of the contest, because I understand compression really well, and Facebook compresses your files so that it doesn't take up a lot of storage. So that's why you'll notice that you're not going to get, you'll notice that you're not always getting the same color depth and even the same amount of sharpness when you post something to Facebook as it looks on your computer or on a print. So great play here. I'd also like to know what this is. Let me take a look. What could this be? I don't know. Some sort of pipe system, maybe? Anyway, let me know if this is your photograph, what this is, because I'm pretty curious. Great job. all around. I love the green hue here of, I don't know if that's mold or some rust and stuff going on here. Great contrast, great exposure, great focal point. Fantastic. All right, I really want to get to this image here because this is one of my favorite types of images to shoot. Now this one is going to obviously well executed. I know who shot this photograph. I won't name names, but it is super well executed. My guy is on AFC. He's tracking his target. He's panning with a slow shutter speed, and he's keeping the motocross rider in this. He's keeping the motocross rider in focus in the exact same area of his lens as he moves his lens with a slow shutter speed. So what am I saying here? When you accomplish these slow motion panned blur, natural blur shots like this, this is one of the most difficult types of photographs to capture. And it's because there's so much stability involved, because you're at a slow shutter speed and your subject's moving really fast. It's hard enough to get a sharp moving subject without blur. You see what I'm saying? Like, so you're making something that's difficult even more difficult. And when you get your result, it's so rewarding. So rewarding. So I don't even think I need to talk more about this image because I love this image. Great job. Okay? Fantastic. And I'm sure you're super proud of this image. I know you're at a little bit faster of a shutter speed than I usually do for motion pans, but that doesn't matter because I don't quite know the exact lighting situation here, and it also is dependent on the speed of your moving subject. So great job, fantastic job here. Yep, amazing, great job. Let me minimize that one here because we already went over that one. Okay, let's take a look at this image here. Fantastic, great contrast, filling the frame nice. I don't see any wasted space whatsoever. Remember, we're talking about not wasting space. What I'm seeing here with this photograph here is a really great focus. Completely sharp, tack sharp, no motion blur, no handshake. Really nice density, like nice dynamic range between the bright highlights and the deep shadows. This is what a great black and white looks like, okay? You want that rich, you want that deep black, you want that bright highlight, and then you want your mid-tones to be kind of dancing around those two things. With that said, we're looking at some really great framing here. So when I say framing, we're talking about the wheel here, okay? But what I'm seeing is that wheel is nice and framed around these branches, okay? Whether that was intentional or not, that's fine. But what I'm saying is great about this image is there is nothing that goes over this image, over the wheel image, except before you get down here. But this is on the rule of thirds, everybody. So that works. And I want to talk about rule of thirds for a second, okay? Everybody starts out with the understanding that the rule of thirds is placing a certain element on the third of your image, but the rule of thirds goes way deeper than that, okay? The rule of thirds isn't so much about where you're placing things on your image, it's about how it balances the rest of the image out, okay? It's hard to, like, if I were to go on a monologue about the rule of thirds, we would be here for hours, okay? So just know that when you're playing on the rule of thirds, that it's a guideline, okay? You don't necessarily have to just place you don't just like, okay, I'm going to play on rule of thirds just because the rule of thirds is awesome. You want to find ways to take advantage of the rule of thirds in more ways than one, okay? So what I'm seeing here is this bush covers this wheel really nice on this sector of the rule of thirds, so this corner part. And then the rest of the image is made up on the rest of the 2/3 of the image, okay? So remember, the rule of thirds can be 1/3, it can be 2/3, okay? And then I like the graffiti and stuff. It's kind of edgy, it tells a story. Yeah, fantastic image. One little tiny nitpick as I look at this, I mean, this image is almost pure perfection. Again, you guys know, I like to nitpick. Sorry, my screen is going a little funky there. Let's go ahead and minimize this. Little tiny nitpick here is maybe just this. I might have cloned that out just to really round out this image of being polished. But that's not a big deal at all. Nothing else to really nitpick that about. And you guys don't feel bad if I nitpick your images, because you should see me nitpick my own images. Let's take a look at this image here. We're looking at definitely a phone picture here, and I know that just because, you guys, when it comes down to photography, yeah, your camera matters just a little bit, but what really makes your images is your optics, so like your lenses, okay? So phones take really great pictures as far as color quality, but they give you this soft edge effect like you're seeing here, okay? So, and that's to be expected because phones can't have really refined optics like your DSLRs or your high-end cameras have, but they do a fantastic job. So this is a great play. We're going to talk about wasting space here a little bit. There's a little bit too much extra headroom here, or not headroom because we're not talking about a portrait, but just top room here. I like that it's vertical. Now my approach to this image, excuse me again, is I probably would have been a little bit lower in my perspective, so I probably would have kneeled down and then zoomed in a little bit on this wheel, because this wheel's really cool because it's really old and rustic and you know, like vintage looking, and this could tell a great story by itself. But the reason why it's not telling the greatest story is because you have all this extra information up here. So if you would have maybe, this photographer, you would have kneeled down and then stood back a little bit, or, you know, just walk backwards a little bit and then kneel down so you're more eye level with your subject, and then zoom your camera in so that you're not wasting a lot of space around the photo, okay? And that would have told a better story here. You would have got some more texture in the wheel and the cog here. Again, I kind of am pretty curious of what this is. Is this some sort of feeder on a farm or something like this? If this is your photograph, you're watching this, let me know in the comments what this is, because I'm pretty curious here. Okay, let's check out what else we got. All right. If you guys know me, I love light painting. I love trails. I love shooting in the darkness. This is super well executed. Let's look at the focal point of the car first. That's looking pretty good. Now this image looks like a couple of images stacked and maybe a little layer masking going on. What I'm looking at right now is where the light on the car is and how it created the trails that it did, okay? So let's see what's going on here. Maybe there is, so there is some sort of light source on the bottom of the wheels or on the wheels themselves that is creating this wheel path. And then you've got a light source. This must be right here on the top of the car, maybe another one over here that's creating this top line here. So if you look, you'll notice you actually have two layers of light streaks here. You've got ones along the bottom, and then you've got another set along the top, which is really cool because that adds dimension and depth. You add in the bright colors, the vibrant colors, and a good focal point, and you've got a fantastic image like you see here. Whoever you are, fantastic job. Maybe one little tiny nitpick would be I would have maybe, and you know, again, when I say nitpick, guys, I mean, these are my opinions, okay? I've been doing this for a long time, and you have a different opinion than me, then that's fine. But, you know, I want to really just get everybody on the same page as far as like what you want to be. You want to break your images down, okay? You got to take your ego out of it. Trust me, because that's how I got really good at photography. I started out and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna, you know, be really good, and then I got good, and then I got really arrogant, okay? And then after a couple of decades, I realized that arrogance doesn't get you very far. Okay, you want to nitpick, you want to be humble, you want to break things apart. So if you're watching this right now and you're hearing me nitpick on your images, please don't feel bad, you guys. Come on, man. We're learning photography here. We're all trying to get better. We're all learning off of each other. So I'm curious of the light situation here. Obviously, we have a lot of white clipping going on, but again, that doesn't matter because this is your own personal style, okay? But I might have liked to see a little bit more color depth in the car itself. With that said, Fantastic framing. You're not cutting off any part of the track here. You're getting a little close over here, but that's not a big deal. Maybe I would balance this one out a little bit over here. Maybe add just a little bit of black space over here in Photoshop. Other than that, I would rate this image as a solid B+, maybe A-. Okay, whoa. Fantastic image here. I know who took this image. This one tells a story, and if you know me, I sure love storytelling, okay? Great play on the wheels. Great play of, I'm not sure if you're using a macro lens here, I'm assuming you are, or you're standing back quite a bit on a tripod with a longer lens. Selectively focusing on the face of the Lego guy, which is really cool. I really like the posing of the Lego guy. I mean, it looks like he's opening that door. You did a great job here, man. I don't know what else to tell you. The added smoke, I'm curious if that was added in as a layer in Photoshop or some sort of preset, or if you actually were blowing smoke in there and it actually created that effect, because it looks awesome. Hey, this is a fantastic image. In fact, you should probably frame this. You know, I've seen guys at art festivals make a pretty good living on this, doing this sort of thing. Like they'll make like little miniature, what do they call them? Just like the little, like the dioramas. You know, they'll make little diorama scenes like this with little figures like you see here, and they make a killing because people love this sort of art on their wall. Great job. Love the placement of the mirror. If I were to nitpick any piece of this, and I don't even really want to nitpick it because it's so great, would be that I can see the edges of the mirror here. So, you know, if you were to use a full-on square mirror, that might have rounded this out a little bit. And that's a pretty tough Photoshop job because you'd have to go along these lines here. With that said, A+, fantastic, great job. Shane, nice job here, man. Another play on the Lego guys with the wheels, and I saw your guys' interaction about this was pretty fun. It's almost like you got the police officer from my last photo trying to bust these guys stealing the tires, which I thought, I don't know if you guys planned this or what, or if it was just a coincidence or just, you know, like-minded great ideas. Great job here. All right, so focal point, boom, right there, right on the edge of this wheel. That's telling me that you're at a lower aperture, probably like 4 or 5.6. Shane, what I think you should have probably done here is, I don't think you shoot on a tripod a lot, so you might want to think about getting a tripod, especially for scenes like this one. Because what you could have done here is still have the same focal point, but shot at an aperture of more like 11 or 16, so that these would be sharp as well. Now, I'd be curious to hear what lens you're using as well, Shane, if you want to let me know that. And then since this image is so fantastic, since it's Shane, I think this is my favorite image of yours, to be honest with you, man. Is this Shane's photograph? I think it is, yeah. I can't always tell by your watermarks, guys. So don't take offense to that. And then I'm looking here. I didn't even notice this. So we got another light source going on here. So great job. Whoever did this, great job. Fantastic job. And okay, so I know that there's this light source here. First, I just thought it was part of the bouquet back here, but I'm seeing this highlight on the corner of the head of the Lego man, and that's looking like a softbox of some sort to me, but I could be wrong, or maybe a window, or it's tough to say. But anyway, great job. Great story, great focus. I don't know if this is too much headroom or not. I mean, in my opinion, it looks fantastic. You know, again, you guys, these are my opinions, all right? I've been doing this a long time, but I'm going to continue to clarify fact versus opinion, okay? Because I want you to know that I'm not going to stop you from your own personal styles, guys, because that's what sells. I'm going to give you the tools that it takes to guide yourself to finding your own style, and you have to know the rules of photography until you're allowed to break them, okay? So, you know, if you don't know the rules yet, I'm going to tell you that you need to fix it, but once you've learned it, go ahead and break it all you want like a boss, okay? With that said, just because I really like polished images, especially with images that I love, I might have dropped this into Photoshop and cloned out some of these white dots just because that would give this really polished look. Again, when you're looking at it on Facebook, you don't notice that as much, but I've got it super large on a 47-inch monitor here, so I can see every little bit of detail. Fantastic. Love it. Storytelling, guys. I'm loving the storytelling here. Now, I remember this image coming through. I think this was you, Heather. Great idea, great vision, and your lines are straight. When I mean lines are straight, it means this edge of the frame here is lined up with this edge of that. That's great. This line is looking pretty straight. I like the duplication of the wheels here, but there was the one nitpick that we already covered here, and we talked about how you were on ISO or aperture priority, I think it was, and that's what led you with a super high ISO. And I see that. I see it in the grain here. I see it in the noise, especially in the shadows. And like I said, guys, noise isn't always a bad thing. You can use noise to give you a film effect, but the tricky part about using a high ISO is that if you don't hit your exposure value accurately, and I mean like perfectly accurate, you are going to get color noise distortion, which I'm going to assume was here before this image was turned black and white. With that said, I mean, great play. I like the duplication of the wheels. These seem sharp and in focus. The composition is great. Looking like your aperture is looking pretty good. The only thing really about this one was the high ISO, and we're covering that in our course, Heather. So let me know when you get through exposure fundamentals, because I'm really looking forward to growing with you and watching you grow through your photography journey here. Now, I love cats, okay? I remember seeing this photograph come through. I don't remember whose it was. I remember seeing it was at a lower shutter speed, which is fine, okay? Remember, you've been hearing us talk about shutter speeds and, under 1/100th of a second you risk motion shake. That doesn't mean you're going to get motion shake if you shoot properly or if you shoot with that in mind. I've gotten tack sharp focuses at 1/10th of a second, and that's because I'm using VR, I'm leaning against a building, I'm controlling my breathing like a deep inhale, slow exhale, and right at the end of your exhale, that's when you depress your shutter when you're using slow shutter speeds, and that is how you get a tack sharp focus like you see here at a slow shutter speed. Remember, we're talking about guidelines, rules. Once you know those guidelines, once you know those rules, you can break them, you can master them. I shoot at really slow shutter speeds, handheld all the time. But it's trickier, okay? It's trickier because you have to consider a marksman, okay? Like someone who's really good in the military, you can hit a target from a mile away. How do you think they're able to do that? Okay? They control their breathing, they control their body movements, and they find their internal focused balance. Okay? And that's how you're able to get sharp images like you see here at slow shutter speed. So fantastic job here. Love this image. The cat's expression, beautiful. And I actually, I didn't even notice, but I really like this play right here. This is cute. This is really cute. Love it. All right, getting down to the wire here. Let's pull this image up here. I'm loving the texture of this image. Let's check this out here. Let me make it a little bit bigger. Yep, okay, so we're looking at another, looks like, I'm going to assume this is like, probably like a wheel for a well, like a water well? Again, if this is your photograph, let me know what this is, because this challenge this week has got a lot of curiosity in me going here. So I don't know if this is another phone picture or if we're looking at, what I'm seeing is just a little bit of a breakup in the pixels, which could be compression from Facebook, or it's posted from a mobile phone, which can sometimes compress your images a little bit more. But as far as composition goes, exposure is looking really good. This looks like the natural color that it should be. We're looking at like an overcast day. And again, the headroom, okay? So you'll note if you've been watching this video, you know that I'm talking about this extra space here. What you could have done here, since this is your main focal point, and since all of this area up here is pretty much the same visual makeup, as it's all just leaves and trees, you don't necessarily need to see this much more trees, because it distracts you. It distracts the viewer from what you want them to see, which is this wheel. Okay, so how much space does this wheel take up compared to up here? Okay, so if you're watching this right now, really listen to me. Okay. If this is your main subject, you want this to make up as much of your frame as possible, with still leaving equal margins, just like you're creating a Word document on your computer. You still want to leave like a margin, but you want to zoom in more. And that's one of my easy tips that I tell people all the time is to stand back and zoom in, because it does a couple of things. Is it flattens space in 2 dimensions, so you don't get like a wide angle distortion. Not that that's what this image has, but it allows you to flatten space in 2 dimensions. But more importantly is it allows you to fill the frame of your camera with the subject itself more, and that is because you're flattening space in 2 dimensions. So what I think you should have done here, photographer, is maybe just stood back a little bit. I like how you got really low, because that's what you need to do. You need to meet your subject eye to eye. Okay, so you did really well there, but just a little bit too much space on top, and that could be done with a crop. But you know, I'm a big fan of not cropping. When you shoot with post-production in mind, you'll find that you don't end up doing a whole lot of post-production because you're thinking about it as you're shooting. So my recommendation for you, and the next time you're out there, is watch the amount of space that you have as far as on top of whatever your subject is, and try to balance it. You know, again, these are my opinions, everybody, but I know what sells, okay? Moving on, let's check out this image here, because this one's got my attraction, okay? I love the contrast here. So first thing that I see here is the red brick. And the red brick is something that really stands out on this image, and it's in directional light. And this photographer took advantage of a disadvantage by executing a heavily contrasted black on a red brick. That's excellent. I love this. This is creative thought, okay? You're taking something, when you can take something that is uninteresting visually to yourself when you're looking at it, and you are then able to create a work of art with your camera with that something that isn't interesting, you guys are on the right track, okay? And that's what happened here. This is simply a tire and a shadow, but with the right composition, with the right exposure, with the right angle, with the right focus, you're able to get a piece of art like this. I would be proud to have this image on my wall. With that said, everybody, I've been dragging on for a long time now. I still have to make my decisions on the winners yet. But I wanted to give you all just that little bit of insight of what it's like to judge behind the scenes. So with that said, fantastic job, everybody. We will be announcing the 3 winners of the challenge here, hopefully today, and then announcing another challenge for you guys coming up for this week, which I have a couple in mind, but I want to keep things moving as far as keeping your guys' brains working hard, all right? So hopefully you appreciated that, and let me know what you thought in the comments, and we'll see you in the group. Thanks.